Yes, Saints remain the strongest team in the Premier League, holding everyone else up after another disappointing loss, this time against Fulham. Glen, Nathan Jones decided to revert to his preferred three centre-backs for the game, with Bella-Kotchap coming in alongside Lianco and Salasu. Roman Peru missed out, presumably after his knock against Brighton, while Joe Rebo also started, but there was still no Stuart Armstrong. We'll get into some of the key moments shortly, but what did you make of the lineup overall?
When I first saw it, I thought, okay, we got 5 defenders there. You can see that. We appear to only have one midfielder, and what on earth is going on with the rest of the team? You knew Che Adams would be up front, but so I was a bit mystified with the way it was going to work. It was basically 3-4-3, wasn't it, with Elyounoussi in the middle with Ward-Prowse. Didn't really work in the first half. We created a couple of chances, but ended up 1-0 down because we dozed off at a free kick, which apparently everyone knew was coming. You could certainly see it coming. You could see the guy hanging around on the edge of the penalty area with half the pitch to himself, sort of thing. Knew it was coming. A little bit unfortunate. So, yeah, every time I see a formation with 3 at the back, I just think we've never, ever, with this set of players, played particularly well in that formation. I assume that's what they were working on in the during the World Cup, but it's kind of hard to tell because it just looks shambolic, to be honest. Yeah, and when we went away from the 3 at the back during the game, we looked better and we got back into the game, and then we seemed, I think, to go back to the 3 at the back at the end of the game and took the foot off the gas, allowed Fulham to come onto us, and lost the game. And it's just it just seems to be an obsession that this new manager has to go with 3 at the back. It doesn't suit us, doesn't suit the players we've got, and it's just another desperately disappointing day to go with the Brighton game, which was even worse, to be fair. But they're a lot better team than Fulham. I don't even think Fulham are any good. I know they're 8th in the league or 7th in the league, but to me, that's indicative of how poor the league is, not how good Fulham are. I didn't think they were particularly good. So, starting lineup, poor. And that formation, every formation we try with 3 at the back, every variation, poor.
Yeah. Alfie, you were there yesterday. I'm probably going to catch you, like everyone else, completely off guard with an immediate constructive question. But what did you feel Saints did well over the 90 minutes?
I have actually had to make some notes on this just to be absolutely certain. Look, obviously, the main positive was that James Ward-Prowse scored a free kick for the first time this season. Obviously, we want to see that more often, and hopefully it gives him a little bit of confidence. But I felt that it's the same as every week. I'm getting a little bit bored about talking about it, really. I know we've just come back after however long off, but it's the same every week. It's some parts of the performance are okay. They got a really good reaction in the second half from the 4 at the back as well. So hopefully, again, we learn from that and we stick to that. But it's missed chances once again that cost them, poor defending that cost them. I think something that they didn't do well, but we might have done well, is that hopefully we'll never see a right-hand side of Ainsley Maitland-Niles and Joe Rebo ever again, because you need more movement than that, I'm afraid. Both of them can be good players, but
just any movement would be a start.
Yeah, exactly. Just you need something there, and we won't see that again, which is a bonus, I would say.
Yeah. Steve, in true Saints style, we managed to go in 1-0 down at the break to a team that hadn't even had a shot on target. Obviously, the goal came, as Glen mentioned, from a corner deflection from a shot that was going pretty wide, flew past Bazzuno off James Ward-Prowse. It's the old adage, isn't it, that I suppose when you're down there, those things go against you?
Well, they do, but it also comes down to us kind of not being in the right positions, and everyone's kind of them frantically running around and trying to desperately get themselves into the right position, and it's because they're not actually set in the position that these sort of things happen. I mean, if someone was even vaguely keeping an eye on Pereira on the edge of the area, then that sort of just dinked corner just gets headed away, and it's no danger whatsoever. I mean, I've seen a lot of comments about the lack of possession that we had. Like first half, certainly commentators were sort of making big sort of noise about the fact that Fulham had 72% possession. But obviously on the flip side, we've had 28 and actually created far more chances than Fulham did, even though we weren't really sort of imposing ourselves on the game. But it was such a scrappy midfield that neither side could really get their foot on it. But we had 28% possession and made all the chances. If that had been the other way, and people have been moaning about it, if that had been the other way around and we'd been 72% and not mustered a shot on target against the team bottom of the league, daggers would have been out. It's like, well, I mean, what exactly are you asking from these players? And it's just infuriating because you just want people. I know it's nonsense asking football fans to give a balanced opinion, but just at least be slightly understanding of the situation sometimes. And yeah, I mean, it's individual mistakes that are costing us, and it's at both ends. And this is not new news. I mean, we were better yesterday than we were against Brighton. As Glen says, that was an incredibly low bar. It would have been some achievement to have somehow been worse. But yeah, I mean, it's frustrating that we've given the goal away as we have. But I mean, those two individual moments don't come down to systems or even team selections. They come down to individuals being switched on at the right time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not sure you can coach that. It's one of those you're either switched on or you're not, and it's not. I'm not sure there's I mean, maybe it's a psychological thing. You get a psychologist in from outside to try and improve the alertness and the awareness of players. I don't know. It's but that's what was essentially missing from yesterday. Because I mean, as Glen said, Fulham were poor. I thought kept Mitrovic very quiet. I mean, he's a guy who's got 7 or 8 Premier League goals already this season.
10.
And I mean, he didn't trouble us at all, really. Obviously missed the penalty late on, which I mean would have massaged his fantasy score considerably, given how poor he'd been all afternoon.
Well, me and Alfie are fuming, Steve, to be honest, because we had 3-1 Fulham. So,
well,
Alfie, I was going to ask about. Sorry, Glen.
No, say anything.
Oh, no, fine. Alfie, I was going to ask about that because after the game, obviously Nathan James has said, quote, "We showed them, the players, the set play for Fulham's first goal 10 times. They do the same set piece every time. It's not something that's off the cuff. They do that week in, week out." So a bit like Steve said there, is it down to players not taking on the instructions? Is it down to, as Steve said there, rightly, players just switching off, a lack of communication on the pitch? I mean, what do you think is bringing about these mistakes?
Well, I think the evidence is in front of your eyes. We've seen it it was the reason that Ralph Hasenhüttl was ultimately sacked. Yes, he lost his way, but he was sacked because there were a number of individual errors that lost him games they didn't really deserve to lose in the final sort of 5 or 6 weeks. And we're seeing that again. Like Steve says, how do you actually resolve that? How do you switch people on? How do you sort of get them going? I don't know. I mean, that has to come down to, I guess, the motivation and the management. But yeah, they're absolutely falling foul of missed chances and terrible concessions. Obviously Gavin Bazunu fallen foul to a couple versus Brighton and against Lincoln as well. And you just think, as a manager, whatever you may feel about somebody being out of their depth or being given a chance that perhaps the timing wasn't right because it was too much of a risk. He can't help his players chucking away points in the 87th minute and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and Glen, I can see Raul has mentioned it as well. Even more annoyingly, that first goal coming after Shea Adams having another one-on-one attempt that, potentially if that goes in, it's a different game. And I think we all admire Shea for his work rate, don't we? But if you think back to Crystal Palace away, 2 glorious chances, that incredible 1-yard handball goal against Wolves. I mean, these are the chances that in the Premier League, I mean, these are the 4 or 5 extra points that are stopping other teams getting points as well, potentially costing Ralph his job. It's at that level, you've got to put them away.
Of course you do, but he is what he is. We all know what he is. He's never going to be anything other than what he is. He's going to be a 1 goal in 5 chances type of striker, and there's going to be some horrible misses in there, and he's still the best we got. So I find it. If you look at Shea Adams against Fulham, I mean, the only thing I will say about the 28% possession is that because most of the time we were booting it over his head. He spent the whole game being marked by Issa Diop, who is massive,
and also not actually very good in the air, surprisingly.
Yeah, but he doesn't have to be good in the air because all he was doing was standing behind Che, making sure he couldn't get to the ball, and the ball was running through to the goalkeeper. It's just garbage football that might work in the Championship, doesn't work in the Premier League unless you 100% commit to it and play the Burnley way, which is to have 2 big units up front and 2 wingers on the correct sides who make the pitch wide and get the ball into the box and we're kind of doing this half and half thing at the moment. But yeah, Che should have scored. He got put through. I think he thought he was offside. He never looked confident that he was going to score. His touch infield to get it onto his right foot, which of course is his best foot, took it too close to Leno and gave him the chance to come out. And that's a shame. It did actually get him. It was actually on target, and it goes down as a decent save. But from where he was and when he got the ball, Leno shouldn't have had a chance. But that's what we got. We haven't got another striker. None of our other players would have scored that. Maybe Joe Aribo, but he wouldn't have run. He'd have been sat on his sunbed somewhere, just chilling, man, because he just, he's a good finisher, but he just, I've never seen a more lackadaisical player in my life. Unbelievable.
I love the fact that in the comments, our watchers are having their own conversations here. Dave Beach has said, "Are there any teams worse than us?" And Josh has just replied again, "I don't think so, Dave." So there we go. It's nice that everyone's having those conversations. Steve, I was just going to say, as Alfie mentioned there, we mentioned on the pod a couple of weeks ago that James Ward-Prowse hadn't scored a free kick this season. Great to see him get on one on target yesterday and score. I was desperately trying to think of positives when I was writing my notes because obviously everyone's a bit down in the doldrums at the moment. He's had a good week, scoring against Brighton, obviously scoring against yesterday, and I thought he actually played all right. But Samuel Edozie as well, I thought was another positive from those 2 games. He's had a really good week, and if we're clutching at positives here, which we are, that's maybe something that we can take out of this week.
Yeah, Dozie's looked good. He's the one kid we've got who's happy with the ball at his feet and running at people. He's always looking to kind of turn and face the opposition goal and run in that direction, which we haven't had anywhere near enough of in the last couple of years, really. I mean, if you look at who we've had in the past, Redmond has been good at it in fits and starts, not consistent enough. Walcott was good at it for probably 3 months at the start of his loan, and basically his legs have gone since. Gineppo, I mean, occasionally, but I mean, it's an absolute tombola, isn't it, with him? But yeah, we don't have anybody else who can do that sort of thing. So to see him finally given an opportunity, I mean, the one thing we've got to be a little bit careful of is fitness and stamina with him, because I mean, as we've seen with Romeo Lavia, who obviously became an immediate sort of must-pick player from pretty much the first game of the season. These kids haven't played this much senior football ever. So we run the risk of kind of running them into the ground. We've got to be a little bit careful. Edozie's obviously come off with cramp in both games that he started. To be honest, that Brighton one, I'd have hauled him off earlier because that game was done a lot sort of earlier than when the sub was made. But yeah, I mean, it was a weird one, that substitution, wasn't it? That obviously Perraud was the one that came on to replace him. But you kind of looked at who else we had. We basically had, I think, 3 strikers and the lad Finnegan, who's a central midfielder. And I don't think you're going to throw him into that situation out of position. So, I mean, everyone said it was a defensive-minded substitution, but I'm not sure really. I mean, unless you throw Adam Armstrong out there, perhaps. But other than that, I mean, whichever way you do it, you're putting someone out of position. At least Perraud has played left midfield before. It felt like the most natural fit.
Did we actually change the formation?
I'm not convinced. I think, to be honest with you, I think Roman was so high up the pitch that I honestly don't think it changed. Mohamed Salisu was still right next to me in the press box, which is the left-hand side of the pitch. Every phase of his starting position was right on the left-hand side. But I think they still stayed over 4. But
yeah, because obviously Perraud had that on the counter where he was the furthest one forward, and Stu Armstrong put the through ball to him.
Yeah. Yeah, it just seemed to me like a negative substitution, and it coincided with us.
It changed the game, didn't it, effectively? Because we invited pressure, didn't we?
Yeah, well, that's the thing about Edozie. Because Edozie is capable of beating a player, if he beats a player, someone else has got to come across to him, and that creates space for other people. And that's why you need players who can go past people.
Could have done with Musa Gineppo on the bench as a straight swap then, couldn't you?
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
wind him
maybe. Yeah, because he was so good. He was so good against Brighton. That, no, that guy hasn't got a clue what he's doing, or when to do it, or when not to do it. Not a clue. So
He's not anyone.
But no, I mean, Adam Armstrong, is obviously not great, but that would have been that would have been the player I'd have brought on, because at least it's someone to worry about from a pace point of view for their right back, who I think was on a yellow card, and he wasn't, he wasn't great. But that substitution, we stepped 10 yards back when we did that and just invited pressure.
I have to be completely honest. If I was a fullback, I'd be much more concerned marking Romain Perraud than I would Adam Armstrong. I feel like he's offered a lot more going forward in the first sort of 4 or 5 months of this season.
Yeah, maybe.
Alfie,
he scored twice for a start.
Well, there you go. It's better than most of them, isn't it? Alfie, if my research is right, then obviously corner for the winner, frustrating, but a bit of a predictable sucker punch almost. I was thinking about this, and I know Martin and you guys have spoken about it a lot over the last 12 months, maybe, but. As far as I remember, all 3 of Liverpool's goals at Anfield were from crosses. Lincoln's goal was from a cross. 2 of the goals against Brighton last week were from crosses. Both of these goals in the Fulham game were from crosses, one way or another. I know Steve was mocking Leicester last year. It feels like we're the Leicester 22-23 here, because we're clearly struggling with crosses and set pieces.
It's been going on for a long, long time, hasn't it? I think both my colleague at the Echo, Benji, and Jacob have both done extensive long reads on how they keep conceding from corners and crosses. I said earlier on a podcast, sort of maybe 6-7 weeks ago, that they've had Alex Clapham as a set-piece coach and still conceded every corner. Ruben Sellers did it for a bit, still conceded 2 out of 3 corners. And I believe that it's now one of Nathan Jones's men doing it. And nobody can seem to coach these lads to stop a set-piece, which is obviously worrying, because you get the opportunity to win a lot of set pieces when you play against a team that are only on the ball for 28% of the time, because they're going to be crossing balls in, deflecting them out, they're going to be hitting the goalkeeper, he's going to have to make saves. This is why I say, when we go back to what Steve said earlier, I mean, what do you actually do with that? I don't think that all hope is lost. I think that Southampton probably, if I'm being honest, will be relegated this season, but it's not over. But I just feel that there isn't much for fans to cling on to and to believe in now, and that's why it's quite upsetting. And actually, I feel that Southampton fans haven't had a lot to believe in for quite a while, because we've had an ownership change and a managerial change, and on both occasions, I wouldn't say it's been underwhelming. I think that's a bit harsh, but you look at like Newcastle, and they've gone from bottom of the table to third with their ownership, and at the moment we're a year on into Sport Republic's tenure, and things are a lot worse than they were 12 months ago. Of course, things take time. Aston Villa got Unai Emery, former Arsenal manager, Europa League winner. Wolves got Lopetegui, and you just feel Southampton, a club of similar status, maybe a little bit smaller than Aston Villa, but they've ended up with a championship manager, which is a risk. And I'm not saying Nathan Jones isn't going to succeed or can't succeed, but it's not anything to inspire the supporters. And I feel for them. We know that there was other consortiums that wanted to buy the club, and could things have been different? I'm not saying that they need to get rid of them now, but I just feel that there hasn't been that much hope.
I can see here Ellie saying, don't understand the logic of Jones' appointment. Clearly doesn't fit his system. Don't know how we beat Forest after their Chelsea performance. They look well coached if we look poor. I can see Andrew here saying, I just think it is sad. The club and the team seem directionless and lacking identity. Big feeling of dread and no optimism, reminiscent of 2005. And I can see that Rao has also said, what I find hard to understand is that it seems like Nathan Jones hasn't watched us play over the last year, as otherwise why on earth did he keep picking Diallo, Gineppo, Edozie for the midfield against Brighton? So lightweight and inexperienced. Glenn, just to maybe finish on the Fulham game, I know you were quite scathing in your tweet after the game about championship style of football and the fact that that's now 3 Premier League games under Jones. We've still not scored a goal from open play. Interestingly, Marco Silva said after the game, they play a low mid-block every time, 5 at the back, 4 in midfield, waiting for mistakes. We were the only team that wanted to win the game. Do you already feel like, Saints are too predictable in the way they're approaching these games, and teams can analyse very quickly where our weaknesses are?
There's nothing complicated about the way we play, is it? I mean, our attacking play has been poor, certainly since Danny Ings left. There's been not a lot there. Amanda Brozier gave us something, even if it was just another option. He wasn't great in some games, but teams had to concentrate with him on the pitch at least. Whereas, as I said earlier, Issa Diop, who's not the greatest defender, just had to stop Shea Adams getting to the ball, and that was us done. We didn't really have much. I know we created a couple of chances in the first half with some vague sort of passing moves, but most of those, it was like Fulham made a mistake and the ball dropped to us in midfield, and then the ball got knocked through. There was there doesn't seem to be much build-up going on. And it does look, Jones was appointed based on metrics, wasn't it? He satisfied the metrics. Well, all Jones's metrics will have been built up in the Championship or in League One. And it's the same as when you sign a player from League One or the Championship. Adam Armstrong, we just mentioned. It's massive. It's a massive jump up. And it's very unlikely you're going to hit the ground running. And we needed a manager that was going to hit the ground running. And we ain't got one. We've had 3 games now. To be honest, yesterday was the best one of the 3 because the Lincoln performance was garbage. And in some ways I was more disappointed with that because I thought I'd see something, some new impetus. But there just wasn't anything there. Brighton, he set up the team to be aggressive defensively. That's why he picked Salisu and Lianco. And then Brighton didn't play with a centre forward, so we didn't know what to do. And so you can do things like that in the Championship because you know what you're going to get. He's not the right level. And you mentioned Wolves earlier on. That's going to be a really interesting comparison because Wolves were below us in the league with so their squad you'd think is pretty ropey as well. They haven't got a goal scorer, etc. Their manager won the first game straight away, so they went above us in the league, dumped us at the bottom. It'd be really interesting to see the difference between the points gained by Wolves and by us between now and the end of the season. So it's a massive gamble. It's another gamble, like the young player thing was a gamble. And young players get injured and they have big dips in form, and this happened. I mean, just off the top of my head, Emma Raducanu in the tennis, young player. Good initial impact, struggled having to play every week, and it's exactly the same with the footballers. We've had going back Livramento injured, Lavia injured, Edozie looks like an injury waiting to happen, partly because of the way he plays, getting kicked all the time and the cramp situation. So that's a gamble. Nathan Jones is a gamble. And what's going to go on in the transfer window? We're kind of looking at that as the last throw of the dice to try and save us. Now, we've got these brilliantly aligned departments apparently, so you think they're going to sign players that are going to fit into Nathan Jones's vision, whatever that is.
Oh God.
Yeah, exactly. So what are we going to do? Sign Ashley Barnes or something?
Well, there is no head of recruitment, is there? There's no head of recruitment in position at the moment, is there?
Well, it's Rasmus. It's Rasmus Ankerson, who says nothing, does nothing publicly,
spends half his time in Turkey.
Spends half his time in Turkey talking up Gustepe or whatever they're called. What's he doing? He's got to take the heat now. I've seen people complaining about Martin Semmens. He's not really involved now from the running the football club, the playing side of things at all. So it's Rasmus Ankerson and his data analytics, and that's a problem. That's a problem. It isn't working, and there's not a lot that I'm seeing that's given me much hope. If they pull 4 or 5 new players out the bag, then but we could sign Messi and we'd be bombing the ball over his head at the moment, and it would make no difference. So I'm struggling. So sorry, negative and miserable. There you go.
That's fine. No problem. Look, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone for all the comments. There's loads and loads coming in. It's hard to keep up with them all. I'm trying to, I promise. But I can see certainly Mark had said about the transfer market. We need to kind of get our ducks in a row and get some signings in the door ASAP rather than leaving it to the 31st. Obviously, that's not Saints style, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. And I can see a couple talking about the new manager bounce, the likes of Villa. And I have to say, I watched Wolves against Man United yesterday, Glenn, and other than scoring a goal, I thought they looked pretty good. You could tell there was a sort of a different spirit amongst them.